Welcome to GBA TV, home of the Girls Basketball Association, GBA Facebook Live, and the GBA Podcast. In the game since 2003. Now let's join the guys live.
All right, GBA Nation, we're back in the studios. It's Wednesday, November 28th, 2019. Back in the studio, talk a little basketball today, and we have a special guest with us, Coach Tuck Connor, of Team Ohio Basketball. Tuck, welcome to the GBA studios.
Yes, good afternoon, good morning, whatever day it is.
Yes, and we also have Jeff Ferguson, the owner and director of GBA, sitting down with us today. And we're happy to have Tuck in the studios, and we're going to talk a little bit of basketball as he's traveling through. I believe you said you're heading up to Kent State.
Head up to Kent State to watch Kent State play our host Duquesne tonight.
That should be a good game.
Yes, it should be a really good game. Got some former players that have been texting me and said, "You're going to make this game, aren't you?" And I said, "We'll be there." So
well,
that's where we're headed.
It's good that the weather kind of held off a little bit. Not as bad, so you can make it up there. Tuck, just I guess we were just talking a little basketball here. So how can you tell us, how did you get into girls basketball and when?
Well, I got into girls basketball because my daughter and her classmates and teammates, we were into softball back in the late 70s, early 60s or 80s, and they decided they wanted to play basketball. So there was no girls basketball teams around at that time, so we just formed an elementary group and had a local group and took players off of that team. We ended up, I think, around 68 girls our first time out locally. And we played in a junior high or a elementary gym, and began to think, well, we can do this. We did a lot of fundamental teaching. We had leagues. Like I say, everybody got to play so many minutes. We had a rotation, and now that we formed a all-star team and went on the road, but we had nobody to play as far as girls basketball. We found the place in Columbus. Gahanna High School was one that hosted a annual event of 8 teams. We called them and they said, well, it's too late, we already have our teams, but then they called back and said one team canceled. But you have to we're in a double elimination event, but you have to start out in the loser's bracket. You might get a game. I said, but it's fine. We won that going away. We weren't allowed in any more girls tournaments. Pickering was going to have one, but that didn't materialize. So from there, we played the following year. We played into the boys' events. They allowed us because it was going to be an easy win. That didn't happen. We played some pretty good boys teams and actually won.
So you were a girls team playing
boys. There was no girls
mixed
around.
Okay.
We could not find anybody in Southeast Ohio. From that, we picked up Katie Smith, who was on a boys team locally and was real successful. She was their top player. And then we moved on we tried to find a state event. The year before that, because we had a class ahead of them, so I played them, and we found the AAU online. Well, it wasn't online, but we did the research, and the chairman of the AAU at that time was out of Columbus, and he found there was no girls teams for AAU, but he did find Coach Patterson from Dayton, Dayton-Patterson at that time. I believe the school's defunct by now. And he brought 2 teams. We had to have 3 teams to be able to qualify for a national event. Mm-hmm. So we had 3 teams, and we were the youngest. There was 3 age divisions in AU at that time. That's how far back that goes.
Wow.
And of course, we didn't beat the older teams. We had to play an 18-under team. We were 12 and unders, and there was a 15 and under. We actually beat the 15 and under.
Wow.
So we qualified, and the tournament was actually a national tournament, was in Kent, Washington. So we couldn't raise enough money to get there, so
sure.
we missed it. Then after that year, it started to take off. Bill Moss hosted the next event. I think Dayton went to the Nationals the following year, and we came in the following year after that. So it might have been a year that we missed. And then it was different age groups. There was like 5 age groups at that time before it expanded. So we went in there, and Dayton came out as the national champions, and we ended up winning that. At that time, there was the only events around for girls basketball in the off season, major events.
Sure.
There was local stuff going on. And we went to the Nationals that year, only team from that age group. And then we went to the Nationals every year after that with that group. That group happened to have Katie on it. And
now, was that a Team Ohio team, or was that a different?
No, we started out with Logan AAU.
Okay.
Because
Logan
the
AAU.
teams were named after their cities they were headquartered in.
Okay.
Dayton, for instance, Urbana. Now, we expanded in a few years after that, and then we changed our name because we were getting so many players from out of our area that it wasn't Logan. It wasn't Urbana. They kept their name, but they were trying to find some other identification. So we went to Team Ohio because I got calls from other organizations that wanted to bring us in, but they wanted a more generic name statewide. Mm-hmm. And at one time, we actually ended up with a team from statewide. We had Cincinnati, we had Cleveland, Youngstown area, Canfield, and we were stationed everywhere. We practiced in Columbus. We had Columbus players. So it became a statewide team at that time. And we were successful at that. Behind the team that originally set the standard for the state events each year, we had another team coming with some popular names on it. And that team also won. So we were winning 2 events, 2 age groups at a time. And then we got Marlene Stallings came aboard on another team, and we ended up winning again. So it kind of snowballed. So we were not, we were respected but not well liked because we did well.
And Marlene's definitely a name in girls basketball in the state of Ohio. You know?
Marlene Stallings is still, after all these years, the #1 scorer in the state of Ohio, boys and girls.
Yes.
No one's broken that record.
And I believe she's the head coach at Texas Tech now?
She's now at Texas Tech.
Yep.
Right now she's, I think she's 4-0. She's unbeaten.
Yeah.
First year in. They're all excited down there. She does a lot of podcast events. Very good promoter, outstanding coach. Got some very good staff with her this time.
Yeah.
So they're on a roll already. They're in a tough division down there.
Sure.
Texas is basketball heaven for a lot of girls players all around that state.
Right.
And they're tough to beat on the road in the summertime. We've seen them a lot. A lot of support financially and a lot of support with other people going on the road with them. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, Texas is a hotbed for basketball right now.
So at this time when you were playing, you had 2 teams. Was it still boys and girls events, or was these now, kind of moving forward where it was all girls events?
It was moving forward in the mid-'80s where it was all girls events, and everybody started, but there was still just one event at that time. Mm-hmm. And I think it became that way almost all the way through the 80s, and then someone, it could have been GBA, that got out there and started promoting and took a grassroots events around, especially where you're located, Guernsey County, mm-hmm. and moved out and found out there was a niche and a market, and let's get these girls playing. So thank goodness for that.
Yeah, it's amazing how it's developed and how you started, and going and playing in boys events to forward now, to 2018 season when. We averaged 140 or 150 teams a weekend playing, just us.
Yes.
Not to mention everybody else that's running basketball tournaments.
They got into the business. That's right.
And it's just amazing, And I remember back in the day when you had. So I guess I just want to let's keep talking. I don't want to get off the subject about what you're doing.
No, we're good because I want to expound upon that.
You went to that things where it started to getting more tournaments in it. At that time, there was only one AAU tournament. Is that the state tournament?
That was it, state tournament.
The top, and that's kind of where we started in when I started seeing that. With there only being, with the state tournament and only 1 or 2 teams getting to go to the national event and experience that.
Right.
And that's when we came in and said, we need to do something. We need to give the girls. We want to many girl play. We have no egos. We didn't need the top teams, but we wanted everybody a chance to experience that.
Yeah.
And to come in, and that's why a lot of our tournaments are events. And we tie in Katie Smith. We tie in with the Lauren Hill, with our thing, with our nationals, so that anybody could come and play. Then you play into your gold division, your silver division, That way, the better teams play the better teams, and then the average teams play the average teams. So,
Well, that's how far it's expanded. You say you have divisions now, and
Yeah.
we didn't have any divisions, and a lot of them just was left out. But now what you've done is helped expand that, where they can compete and feel, like winners, basically,
Right.
that at that level, whether they're not that skilled or they're just learning. It's about that, I think, more so than anything. You have to have fun and feel good about it. If you're beaten up completely every time, which we've been on both ends, it doesn't feel good, and the people just get out. Parents are very protective.
They are.
And
They are.
They don't want to see their children go through that.
Exactly. Now, take us from your one or two teams to one tournament, okay? At your top, at your peak of your teams and everything, and that's when GBA was kicking off and running tournaments. Take us from your one or two teams to your 15 or 20 teams that you had. How did it?
Yeah,
how did it progress? That
Well, we went all the way up to 20-some teams, which is it's hard to manage.
oh, it's
and
be a nightmare.
You have different coaches, you have different personalities, you have parents who see this team doing better than that team, and you try to manage that. It's really hard, and I don't see how some people do it, and they don't. It's not successful. You've got to focus. You've got to have the coaches in place, which we're trying to do now, and they got to be able to manage and be on their own and be able to do the things that you like to have, like your GBA outfit. You like to have the people working for you doing that. They're not working for Team Ohio. They're associated with Team Ohio. So
Right.
everything that happens with their team, I also get calls on. So you've got to really teach. You have to let them go to do that, but they have to mentor after what your ideals are.
Right, and basically, when you're overseeing all that, you're basically the head coach of all of those teams.
That's
and you're
correct.
dealing with all the problems and all the parents calling and any issues of playing time to coaches' issues to player issues to whatever. You're overseeing that, and that's one of the things we've never started teams. We may look in that direction soon, but we haven't done any of that because that's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, and what you have now is, I feel, different divisions of teams like you have started, but you have different divisions of events. You have your local events or your statewide local events. Then you have your exposure events. Exposure events are what's in vogue right now, based on the big teams or the top teams traveling around the nation, and to get in front of college coaches. Now, how long NCAA is going to let that last, I'm not sure, but there are different exposure events during the NCAA exposure times, or the viewing times, evaluation times. And everybody tries now to focus on those. But there are other events that are going on to happen. I call them training events, which gets you prepared to be out in front of coaches. And I say coaches, I mean Division I coaches. There's only a certain amount of time for them to be out to observe players.
Right.
So that you gear as a team towards that if you can, and you play the best from anywhere from Georgia to Texas to Florida to Maryland to anywhere you can go. And you've got to also, as a leader of a team or a group or a club, to manage what your players, where they want to go to school. A lot of players, I'd say the majority, want to stay local. So you go regional? And then you have some really good players who would like to look national. We've had players at, for instance, Oregon State, Stanford. We've had players at Texas. We've had players in Florida. We still do. And you've got to realize what market. College coaches go by markets. They feel that at their time coming out, they don't have time to go see someone in Ohio if they're from down in South Carolina, because they're not coming to South Carolina.
Right.
Well, we've done that. We've tried that market. We've gone to Georgia many times, for instance, and the southern schools love our players, but we don't have that many want to go there. They don't want to go that way, far away from home. And when they do, after the first week or two or year, they're back home. So we try to keep it regional right now, and that's another thing coaches maybe don't even look at.
Right. So tell me this: how did you start? How did you get from your one or two teams to your 20-some teams? How did that And that was in the 80s?
That was in the 80s, and when you are successful and what we did in training and how we went out about it, getting the facilities was tough. But some of the people that came to us said, we have a facility, we can practice here. And we had to alternate, which we still do. We go south, we go north, and we try to share that as much as we can locally. We may have a practice, or we call them workouts, during week times, and then have one major practice on a weekend day that we can get everybody there, or try to get everybody there. It's really hard nowadays because there are multiple players, multiple sport players that we try to utilize, and they really want to do basketball in the off season. So we try to compensate for that.
Now, did you do tryouts and advertise?
No,
and
well,
things,
we've done tryouts before, and to me, it's not what I don't like to do that. You've got players, and most of us have been on that end where they choose and you get chosen, and that's, you may love the game of basketball and just get discouraged right there, especially a young player. So we don't do that. We go out. I have coaches. John Coffey, one of them, is out all the time. He's out every day, 2 and 3 games almost every day.
Right.
He and I both, I think, last week together we witnessed probably close to 30 teams between us in one day.
Jeez.
So that's what we do. And we try to find players, and people will tell us, we got to see this girl. We've got calls. I got 4 calls on the way here about a player that someone saw last night. So I've got to go see her. So
you get contacts on if there's a good player somewhere, and
yes.
then you go see them. For this is now, but like in the 80s when you was coming up through, what was there more tournaments starting then? Was there more than just the state AAU tournament, or is that all you guys played in?
That's all we played in.
Up until
GBA
came along.
Until you came along.
Really? Now I worked with another name prior to GBA. GBA started in 2003.
Yeah.
We started running tournaments probably about 97, 98.
It was in the 90s.
Yeah. Late 90s we started running tournaments under another banner, and that we was doing all girls tournaments, but then at that point we wanted to focus and have an organization that knew that it was just girls tournaments. And at that point, and I think some of our biggest weekends has been, we have had over 300 teams a couple weekends, back in the early 2000s, 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, something like that. We had a couple years, and now we get 200 and some a weekend, 250, 270 a weekend playing, 270 teams playing. But we may have 3 or 4 tournaments going on. But so really, before we came in, there was just
AAU.
Yeah, there was just AAU, and that's it.
Correct.
Yeah, I was around when Jeff first started running those events, and I was a student at Muskame University playing basketball, and I remember running the clocks. I would run the clock and come back and here at Cambridge, Ohio, in the Armory there, one court.
Mm-hmm. Played there.
Eight teams, and probably 4 or 5 of those teams were just free entries.
Mm-hmm.
Just so we could have the tournament.
Just to run the event.
Thank you.
And I'm a kid to and now I've been from the start to the end of this, and it's amazing to see how much girls basketball, women's basketball has developed. From those 8 teams and one gym, whatever, to what we do now, and the vision and the passion that Jeff had to get this going and to provide things is just been, it's amazing.
The development was a key word that you mentioned. It really is. I think the players have developed to a point where they're actually they're very good, and it's hard.
Yes.
It's compared to what it used to be.
Absolutely.
We were fundamentally sound, and we would have a lot of people at the national level tell us, "Boy, you're one of the most fundamental teams out there." Well, we still are, hopefully, but there's a lot of other ones now that have really developed, and you have a lot of trainers out there.
Right.
I think we have probably close to a dozen trainers in our area, from Columbus to out to this far.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really developed as far as individual instruction, and we do that on our own also. And plus, we have other people that we try to incorporate into our individual instruction. Jim Clayton in West Virginia, who is in another territory, but he comes to Ohio and he does a lot of good training.
Yeah, and he's very good, and
yes.
We've done a few things with Jim and look to doing some more things with Jim, because what he does and the fundamentals and the passion he has for the game fits the mold of what GBA is. So.
And the passion and the enthusiasm he has.
Yes.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's
yeah.
just the amount. So basically, the '80s then it was still just the state AAU tournament.
That's correct. In the spring, you had one tournament.
One tournament.
You had to get ready for it.
So at that point, you still only had 3, 4, 5 teams. And then did your teams not pick up until the GBA started?
Well, yes. After the GBA started, then we picked up more teams because you had more age groups. Now the AAU had more age groups, and I think that's where you came in and expounded upon that.
Yeah.
And it was by age at that time with the January 1st birthday. People have gotten away from that. Now it's grades. The NCAA actually recommended that. They wanted to see grade years, not even a grade. You're not a sophomore, you're a year number. So, for instance, right now the 2020s are a hot item. The 2019s, everybody's looking 2021s. So that's how you gauge them now. It used to be, well, she was a 6th grader, she was a sophomore.
Right.
Not anymore. Then you had to have an age restriction because you had some girls in the 6th grade that were actually 14. So they got away from that and just went by years, which helped out. And the NCAA recommended that. And that was good for the coaches because that's how they recruited, was based on your grad year.
Right.
So we've gotten to that point.
So then it just continued to grow then through the 80s and into the 90s, and then when we came along, that's when we first started. I don't know how many teams you had, but you had a ton of teams.
Yes, and then expounded. We had to have an outlet for them, and there are different levels of play. I mean, I don't want to say ABC group or anything like that. They're still learning. Some of them advanced quicker. Some of them didn't put as much time into it. It was all about how much do you want it and how much time are you allowed to get into it.
Right, and then when we, our first big event, was probably in 2000, 1999, something like that, when we did a high university.
Mm-hmm.
And
that was huge.
That was our first adventure out of, doing Cambridge tournaments or maybe at Newark or Lancaster or some of those other high schools. We said, well, let's try a tournament there. And back then, all players was able to play on the Division I college campuses.
That's back then.
Yeah.
A lot of things happened back then.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of, we brought a lot of kids in, and it continued to grow from there up until they changed the rule there a few years back, for probably 4 or 5 years back now. That the 9th grade and above cannot play on Division I college campuses. So then we had to revamp what we was doing. But all in all, it's great to get we don't have no ego. We don't need to have the best elite teams from all over the country playing. We want to give more kids a chance to play basketball, and I think it's crazy how it's developed and how many kids are playing.
And kids of all level. I mean, GBA is made up of kids of all level of play. I mean, we have really good teams, and have seen really good players, and then you have just your Again, I don't like the ABC thing either, but we just the biggest thing with GBA is when Jeff talked about is he wants to provide an opportunity for girls to play basketball of all levels. So we have seen all levels, and it's been great.
Yeah, we've got the kids that are going on, and one of the girls, one of the big girls playing at Ohio State right now. You've seen her at one of our events,
right?
So and that's. So we're everywhere from that level, and the Ferris girl that played at Connecticut,
Mm-hmm.
Playing at 6th grade, playing in our tournaments, all the way up through, and your Allison Bales and Jessica Davenport played when she was in 6th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, whatever. She played Allison Bales' team, and
I remember that was at the Armory.
And the West Virginia Thunder teams came in with Shannon Lewis and Larry Lambert. Larry Lambert, started the West Virginia Thunder program back then, and we would call. Back then is when you had your dial phones at home, and I would spend $800 a month on long distance bills. Calling these people and talking them into coming to Cambridge, and they probably thought I was crazy, wondering why are we going there, but they ended up coming. A lot of them came for free, but then it developed into into a pretty good program. So
it's probably little known that we helped Larry Landry get started with the Thunder.
Is that well? You've been around as long, if not longer, than
we were one of the first groups to hook up with him to help him get started.
Yeah, and what a good guy he was.
Oh yeah, he used to sit on the floor and
Yeah, yeah.
He sat on the floor of our bench and watched.
I don't know how many D1, D2, D3 players he's brought through our program, but there's a bunch.
Yeah.
Can't name them all for sure. Same way with you guys and some of the other programs as well. And it's crazy how the evolution, how things have changed over the years.
Yes, a lot more people have got into the game. I see that, and a lot of promoting.
So how many years have you been in?
I think I'll be working on my 36th year next year.
Wow.
You go back to 1981, whatever that is, or I've lost track.
Yeah.
Didn't matter. Seems like it was yesterday sometimes.
And considering GBA's been around since 2003, and then a few years before that, so we've been running tournaments about 19, 20 years.
Right.
So you were around way before that, getting going.
Yes, it was. It was lonely at that time.
Yeah. We want to take a quick break. We'll come back and talk Katie Smith, talk about some upcoming tournaments we have and some other stuff with our special guest, Tuck Connor.
Yep, we'll be right back.
Cincinnati, Ohio is the host to our 18th annual GBA Nationals and has a new format coming in 2019. The 2019 GBA Nationals will now be a 3-day event with Kings Island discounts available all 3 days. Games will start Friday morning and conclude Sunday afternoon with the crowning of our 2019 GBA National Champions. This tournament draws participating teams from multiple states and has averaged 115 teams annually. Visit our website at www.gbabasketball.com for a complete listing of 2019 events.
All right, welcome back, GBA Nation. Back in the GBA studio, and we've just been joined by GBA guru, Tommy Strasser. Tommy, welcome to the studio.
Oh, hey, it's great to be here, our first snow day. And, John, an opportunity to join Tuck Connor on a podcast. I can now cross just another thing off my bucket list. Truly an honor.
Yep, we're very excited to have Tuck in the studio today, and we've been talking a little bit about the history of basketball, how it kind of has evolved from when Tuck first started with his Logan Elementary team.
Logan.
And then now into Team Ohio and things like that. So Tuck, if you just want now maybe kind of bring us up to speed a little bit and talk about your teams today. Kind of some of your players, things that's going on, and what you're looking forward to.
Well, coming out for next spring, we hope to have possibly 4 to 5 teams. We're working on coaches. Coaches is a big thing with us, and make sure we have coaches that can instruct. And we've got actually our alumni is coming through. We have 2 alumni players who are going to take teams. Now, last year before last, we had Dominique Dosick, who actually did an internship at Ohio University. Mm-hmm. And she's going to be going into sports administration. Fact is, she'll probably get her master's at Valparaiso.
Okay.
She's going to be, well, maybe you shouldn't say this, she's going to be there.
Okay.
In her post-grad years.
Yeah.
And so she had an internship, and that it helped us to actually ask other alumni if they wanted to do it. Then we had to actually approach us and say they'd like to do it. And I went out, Lydia Poe is one of them, and she and I went out and scouted players this past summer to incorporate. They're going to have a younger team, and it'll be a pretty good team. It'll be an 8th grade team, and most of the teams we have play up because of the competition.
Sure.
And that's one of our philosophies to make them better. We're not concerned about the wins and losses at this stage. We're concerned about their development and how to play at a hard level. At a very high level and play very hard. And fundamentally, we'll teach you the fundamentals if you really want to do it. And I say the player really wants to do it, not the parent really wants to have the player do it. Then you'll be successful. And that's been one of our secrets. And that's what we recruit. Once we see the player that can play, then we ask them questions, just like any coach, and you've been there, of how their character, their culture, off base. And we watch the parents. Nowadays, the parents are really being watched by college coaches, and being in from that environment also, I watch the parents and I'll watch what they say. Sometimes I'll sit with them, sometimes I'll sit across the way to see their reaction. We also watch the players when we're evaluating them. how they react to their coaches, how they react to their teammates, what they do when they come out of the game, what they do when they're out of the game, and how much support and how much enthusiasm. Are they leaders or not leaders? All that takes place even at our level. It really takes place when you have college coaches watching players. And that's something that they've got to get in tune to. A lot of good players that are on the court won't get recruited by really good coaches at the collegiate level unless they have all their ducks in a row, basically, of how to maintain themselves on and off the court.
Yeah, those are all great points, and it's I'm kind of glad you brought that up because there's so much more than just your performance on the floor now, and especially
GBA Nation needs to be listening. Parents, players, the high school coaches need to be listening to some of this stuff because it's very important and it's very good stuff for them to hear.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. And social media has become a big aspect in college recruiting. And you see it every day where players are losing scholarships because they posted something on Twitter, or posted something on Instagram, or whatever it may be. So there's a lot more to the game, to that whole process than just your performance on the floor.
And Tuck, I had a coach when I was coaching started out at the varsity level. My first couple of years, I had an older coach tell me, Tom, more games are won and lost at the dinner table than on the floor. And at first I thought he was crazy. But then the longer you coach, you realize that. It's important when you're coaching kids and you've got a GBA team and stuff like that, and you're working kids in, when the kids go home and they hear their parents talk about this kid or the coach, a lot of times they're going to believe their parents and use that as an excuse on why they're not as successful as they want to be. But I love your line that the kids, they have to want it more. It's more important how much they want it than their parents. And I love that line right there. I've never heard it said like that.
That's exactly what we look for, and that's how the game is evolving to that. You ask any college coach or listen to any college coach that are very successful, they will expound upon that, and that's what they look for. And we as coaches at this level, at the high school level or the club level, have to be able to teach that to the parents and to the players, especially the players. They have to understand that. Now, you don't get a positive response every now and then, and I didn't a few times last year. But you have to make that, you have to let them know that's where it's coming from. And if they don't, there's so many players out there now, thanks to what you've done in the past and what you're doing now, there are more and more players every year. So somehow this has to be taught. And it's the involvement of the game. You have to stay up with the game. Somebody asked me the other day how the game has changed. Well, this is one of the things the game has changed. There is more involvement from the parents or the relatives than there has been ever, because it's such a competitive game now. It wasn't like that. When you're the only one in town, you can get by with a lot of stuff. But now everybody's involved, and everybody's involved at your level also in organizations.
Right.
So it's a matter of you've got a lot of people who can talk a good game, but they can react to a good game and have as Coach Clayton says, look at their resume. And you have a resume, as GBA does, of organizing different events and great events, whereas some groups and players and families don't have that, but they can talk a good game. And that's why we don't have tryouts. We hear a lot of things, but we go out and watch, and we get more out of that. And watch tapes and watch things that are online. The social media is another involvement that has come on and everybody has to look at. And we look at those too. We don't look at highlights, although there's many highlights online. And we may look at that and then go out to see what they do when they're not highlighted. Or we may have players and the college coaches do the same. You may have be sent a video or something and you go watch it, but you also watch other teams that they're playing. You get videos from them and see what that player does against them. Whereas you're not even that's not the main focus of that player. They're also on there, so you get to learn a lot about that. We do the same thing.
Right.
So that's another way how it's evolved. So
yeah, and it's it's great that you do it that way, because so many people, again, they get caught up in what's happening on the court. And you know, as a coach, like, you're not only trying, obviously when you're coaching your players, you want them to you're trying to coach them to the best of your ability, so they get the most out of what their ability is, but you're also teaching. You know, you're teaching life lessons out of it. There's all kinds you want them to grow up to be better individuals. You be successful in life, you know, in their job, their career, things like that. So there's a lot more to the coaching aspect and what you're trying to do to develop the kid as a whole, and not just as a basketball player.
Correct. Yep.
And I know watching you coach and at the levels that you have and with the type of kids you have, it makes a big difference when you can just coach X's and O's and you don't have to coach, motivate the kid. When the kids are already motivated to play, it makes it a lot easier for the coaches to do that instead of you having to constantly, trying to push buttons to get everything out of them.
Well, another thing we mentioned earlier is with our players, like the group that Lydia is trying to put together, and I mentioned we'll be playing up. Well, in essence, what we're doing is they may be stars back at their home base, but we're trying to take them to another level emotionally, physically, and sometimes it's really hard. And if you don't have the right character to do that, if you don't understand that you have to play the hardest you can, and you're going to play out of your what we call comfort zone. Everybody uses that term. Yep. And we play out of our comfort zone. And sometimes it gets real edgy for the parents to do that. And sometimes we don't know at the time, but players will actually just freeze. They'll just freeze up and they'll balk and they'll say it's too hard. Well, then this is what it's going to be like when you're a freshman in college. You have to sit the bench unless you're really outstanding. And if you can't do that now in this atmosphere, with the exposure events, we try to get everybody in the game. We have played teams from other areas, out of state, for instance, that have played, may have 14 on the bench and played 6. And coaches get kind of itsy when they actually go tell the coach, going, "What are you doing?" So you've got to, coaches will do that. They're out there for the win, which is great, but this is not exposure events is not a winning atmosphere. It's a exposure event, and that's what it's for. So you get that, and you have to explain all that to them. And some coaches don't explain that, and they're more concerned about themselves winning and looking good and being. But we may go 500, but we still play players. Now it's up to you as player to be able to perform at that level, and that's hard. That's the kick right there.
Yep. So getting back to sort of the present there with your teams. And you talked about you got some former alumni coming back, coaching some teams. So what grade levels do you have coming this year, and maybe highlight some of your players?
Well, we have John Coffey, who's doing our older group now, and it goes by mostly have 2019s juniors, and he'll have some 2020s, and with that, and he'll have probably the oldest of a number of players on the team that we'll have. We have another team we're forming. Now this is in Southwest Ohio, so we expanded over there with those groups. And we have another coach coming out, I believe Bethel High School. Assistant coach is going to take another team. Now it's going to be compatible with what John will have, but we just have so many players calling now, and so many people looking to be playing for Team Ohio. And we're going to develop that. And then I'm not going to say it's going to be a B team, but it's going to be A team compatible. We're going to try to bring those into the GBA event, which we're going to expound upon in a few minutes, to be able to get them started. Now that's a new start. And then with Lydia's team, and now we've got another player, which I'll see tonight, who's also asked possibly to look into internship. She's a junior at college at Duquesne.
Okay.
And we're looking into possibly getting her involved for next spring, because she will graduate early. She graduates in December, and she has another year after that of playing collegiate basketball, and she's going to be a coach. So if we can get her involved, we may have a younger team in the 6th and 7th grade level to start off with. Now we have some 7th grade people calling, but we haven't really entertained them yet because we haven't had a coach, and she's going to be a really good coach. And we'll have more of those. And I say we need to get more of the female players involved in coaching if they're going to.
Right.
Sometimes that's kind of iffy for some of the parents. They're young. They don't. But these people, Lydia she's as good as I am. I mean, she's stern, and she's learned to do that, and that she'll be right on top of it. I'm very comfortable with that.
They've been around the game. They've
Right.
been through good programs. They're
Yes.
playing at a high level, so that they understand the game and will be very.
And these ladies I
influential.
mentioned have been on the national scene. They've been in the national finals. They know what it takes to get there emotionally, and what to look for in the player, and what to look for in the team, and how to train. They're into that. And we have other trainers coming on board. We're talking to the trainer for the Athletes in Action, and we met with him, and he's really good, and he may want to be involved. And that's in the Dayton area.
Okay.
So that's really going to help. We have trainers our way, besides Jim Clayton, that want to get involved. We have the strength and conditioning coach at Shawnee State wants to get involved. We have other players around the Columbus, or not players, trainers that want to get involved. Now, there's a lot of other clubs out there utilizing some of these trainers, but they're also coming to us, which is good. They have heard about us, and they go, how do you do this? And we also go out and train. I'm out every week, possibly. And that's as far as I go all the way to Dayton. I'll go all the way to the river. I'll go all the way up north, depending on what they have. And we have players from up north also. I don't want to neglect them. But that's where it's at. And learning how to play. We train during games also. There's a way of training based on your actions and fundamentals. And there's also a way to train for the game situations as you're in the game. And how to set it up and to get into a game, and then emphasize that during the game and move on to the next game and emphasize another point. And that's how they learn to play a game. It's all about how to identify in a game situation and what you see. You ask any player, what did you see? And they'll go, huh? They don't understand that. And that's what we teach during the game. And now they come off the bench after a few times and say, I saw this, I saw that. That they're way ahead of the game, and they're learning as many as they can, going at a higher level. And these are usually the players who want to go to the higher level. The other ones who are, we're just here to play.
Sure.
They're not into that. So we lose some of those.
Yep.
I tell you, the kids and the players nowadays, and the parents are so fortunate to have programs like yours that's been through it. I mean, you have a great mixture of trainers, and you have to give a shout out to to Coach Coffey, who has been coaching forever as well, and also yourself. And now you're tying in former players that can actually, be on the court, did it on the court, can talk to them, talk to your players, and teach them more than just the basketball stuff. So I mean, you have a great mixture, and there's so many programs. And some of the things that bother me is some of the guys that want to coach. A lot of people have great intentions of coaching, but if they only know what they was taught and what they learned.
Right.
And that's the thing, you have to get some of these kids ready. And whether it's getting ready to play at the college level, some of our kids are getting ready to try to make the high school team, to make the junior high team or whatever, but you can't just put a couple plays in and expect the kids to run. We want to teach them why we're doing what they're doing, why are they reading these cuts and reading these screens, whether it's over the top or underneath, and why they're doing things. People think that all of our staff have basketball backgrounds. We don't go and brag about that or whatever, but we've all been coaches and we all know. So when we see it, it gets a little frustrating that, we want the kids, and this is why we're doing the GBA. We want them to learn the game, not just a few teams, but we want as many kids as possible to learn how to play the game of basketball and why you're doing what you're doing, not just because that's the play that we drew up, but trying to get it in their mind on what they're doing and why you play the game, and I think that's a big key. And you have a great combination of knowledge with coaches, older coaches that's been in the game for 20, 30, 40 years, and you're tying in some trainers, and also you're tying in the younger former players that's coming up that's going to potentially be good coaches at one point. So
you mentioned Coach Coffey. He's probably one of the best motivators, positive coaches around, and he's been at it 30 some years also. And I think he has like national championships himself.
He does, and you know what? And he brought his teams to our tournaments.
Oh yes.
I mean, he would bring them and play all the time since we started. So, you know, and we don't forget that stuff, and that's a big shout out to him, and we appreciate the support, and he does a great job. People don't realize how lucky they are to have somebody like that going around to all of these games. Look on the internet.
Yes.
I don't think there's a tournament that he's there before it starts and he doesn't, and he's there when it ends.
He's the first one in and the last one out.
He's at the GBA helping put away stuff. You know? So.
Yeah, I think the last event we had is I said he met me at the door. You know, I asked him if he was working today or just watching games.
See, and that's the thing. How many people do you see come and go that have kids playing, that coach and whatever, and which is great. That's fine. They're there to help their kids, and that's no problem. But one of the reasons we wanted you in here, and the other reason is you don't have any kids playing. You're not getting rich off of this. You're doing this for the betterment of girls basketball and the betterment of getting these kids, you know, some scholarships or getting them better in the game of basketball and in life. And that's what it's all about. And that's why we love what you do, and that's why you know we definitely support you, and we appreciate everything you've done for the GBA from 2003 all the way through.
And Tuck, you mentioned a lot of people that are coming in, you know, that want to help, and you know, they're a lot like you, and that's what makes the GBA so special. You talk about people who have been there and done that, but it's those people that have the passion and the desire to want to help others and make them better. And not everybody who has, quote, been there, done that, you know, has that desire to do that. But, you know, I hear you get excited when you start naming off all these people who want to come in, and, you know, and that's a credit because they see you do that. And, you know, I just got to ask, it's been, you know, just killing me inside to know, you talk about, you know, you and Coach Coffey running around together. When you're on the road and you eat lunch, who picks up the tab?
You're looking at him.
Okay, that's what.
Now, no,
My money was on you. John's was on Coach Coffey.
now Coach
so,
Coffey will buy the players. There's a difference.
Okay.
That's all right. I know.
But
That's
you-
all right too. That's
But
right.
you'll pick up lunch, so that's important too.
Yes.
Trust us, we all vouch for that.
Look at it. Look, today's a perfect example. It's what degrees outside. It's snowing.
Yes.
Tuck is on his way drove an hour and a half here, and now going another 2 hours to Kent to watch two former players. I mean that says a lot for you know, for what it's all about.
Yeah, and we, you know, Tommy, you hit the nail, you know, with Coach Connor and his passion and what he does for the game and for the kids, and we kind of talked about this last week with GBA, is the passion that we have, you know, the vision that Jeff started to do and run these events and create opportunities for kids. And, you know, everybody on our staff is family, close friends, with the passion to do we love what we do,
What we're doing.
what we're doing, and so to have, you know, a program like the Team Ohio and yourself a part of GBA and be, you know, kind of see things develop, it just kind of it all comes full circle, you know. So I always say good people find good people, and that's just the way it is.
And that's one of the biggest pluses of the GBA. Tuck, how do you ever build a friendship, you know, with this guy living in Byesville, Ohio, if it wasn't, you know, for the GBA? And it, you know, it's the relationships that we have. Yeah, we love helping the kids and putting on the tournaments, but I tell you, the friendships that we have, you know, been added through the years really makes it even that much special.
And they expanded also. Yes.
Can we get a group hug before this podcast is over?
We need to give a shout out to Coach Coffey and tell him next time he needs to make the trip. So
We'll
Yes,
get
for sure.
him here.
We'll get him here, yes.
Yes.
before the start of the season, we'll have Coach Coffey on.
And you say traveling. He and I will be, and it's his call. He's been calling, be in Kentucky this Saturday, watching, and there'll be Ohio teams in that. But there'll be, and then it's basketball. That's what
Sure.
that's what we do. And
Yeah.
his statement is, it's a lifestyle.
Yes.
It is.
Yeah.
That's what he says. for sure.
And it absolutely
And
is.
he lives by that for sure.
Yes.
And Tuck, remember, he's going to get the last word in
Oh, yes,
on
he
you
will.
when he comes. So
Yes.
if you need to get one more shot in on him, you go ahead.
You stated the time we'll be going to. You're going to have to add to that on double time.
Okay.
All right, guys. Hey, let's take a short break here, and we'll come back and talk a little bit about GBA basketball and Katie Smith. Stay tuned.
The 4th annual GBA Laurel Hill Classic is back the weekend of May 17th through 19th and is an NCAA certified event in 2019. The Laurel Hill Classic, held in Cincinnati, Ohio, had over 135 teams in 2018 and has helped GBA donate $64,000 the past 3 years to the Cure Starts Now Foundation and its battle against DIPG. This event is held in honor of the late Laurel Hill and her inspiration to find a cure for DIPG. An awesome event for all levels of teams. Visit our website at www.gbabasketball.com for a complete listing of 2019 events.
All right, welcome back, GBA Studios. And guys, we were just sitting here during break and talking a little bit about some of Coach Connor's former players. So, Coach, can you let the audience know? I mean, let's talk a little bit more about some of your former players that are now college athletes, and then current players.
Well, right now we have our freshmen, our seniors in college right now. Most of them are doing really well. They're leading their teams. Some of them are on undefeated teams, Dominique Dosick being one of them. And I'm afraid I'll leave some of them out. But
That's okay.
Yeah.
She's close by, so I keep track of that. Other players in her group, we have one player down in Florida who is coming on. She transferred. And that's another thing we haven't discussed about transfers, but that happens a lot. Mm-hmm. And she's found a niche. Sometimes you don't understand what the coach is like, and the coach don't understand what the players like, and you have to. That takes time to do.
Yep.
And that's. I think I mentioned that earlier about what we try to do to try to get that mix, so they're happy. And we have some players two of the players I'm going to go see tonight. One's a redshirt. She got hurt her freshman year. I've seen two already this year. That are out there. One's out in Maryland. She's one of our taller kids. She's coming on. She got hurt her first year. So physicality-wise, it's very hard when you go that Division I level, even at Division II. Coming down through this past year, and I'm talking about the players who have donned a Team Ohio uniform.
Yeah.
We had 5 All-Americans last year come through.
Wow.
And that's something we haven't had that many at once. We've had players in the past. At one year, we had 4 players of the year of their conferences, all in the same grade, all in the same team that came through. And they're high profile. One's with Penn State, one was with Duke, and 2 other mid-range D1s. Mm-hmm. Now this year, they're spread out from D2s to NAIAs to everything else, but they found their niche of where they should be. It's a matter of, or do you want to be a big fish in a little pond, or do you just want to be in the big pond itself? Right. And you have to learn that. So we also try to gauge that depending on what your level you're at. And we've had levels all the way from, and again, players that have had the Team Ohio uniform on, all the way to Connecticut to Stanford to doing the top Tennessee players from all the top groups, teams that have been in the past, and teams that are being top now. So we've been associated with that. We've had those coaches around us, and we get during this time or during the springtime, I may get 6 to 10 calls from coaches around the nation wanting to know what we have coming up. And we have our freshman class who was with us be 2 years ago, because after their junior year we don't have them, their senior year we don't have them anymore.
Right.
And they're but the freshman class this year, we have I think 2 or 3 players that are starting for their teams, which is phenomenal. One of them is actually almost leading their team in 2 or 3 categories as a freshman in college. So it's phenomenal what I think what we try to incorporate into our teachings and their accomplishments. And this comes from the coaches saying that, my goodness, we didn't understand when we watched you how much these people know about the game. And that really thrills us because we have taught that in the same way as Coach Coffey. We know when we get players from your group or your teams that they're going to be just a little edge more knowledgeable. They may not be as quick or as strong as some of the players we go after.
Right.
But as far as playing, they know their X's and O's as far as what to see. Again, we emphasize that, what we look at on the court. And they can get into game quicker. Let's put it that way, for the collegiate game.
It says a lot for your program. You know, you got coaches calling and saying that, and then, you know, All-Americans, Players of the Year, the conferences. So
we had a discussion with a parent. They were going to leave us. And I said, just be patient, bear with us. She's going to be an All-American. He didn't believe me. She was an All-American last year.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And she's now dominant. She's Player of the Week in the first week out of their conference, which is sensational. And
it's amazing, yeah. It's hard. Is it hard for you to keep up? Do you try to keep up with them all in college?
Oh, that's why I'm not mentioning a lot of names, because I'll forget somebody. But it is hard.
And they all know. And you're
and
they put on the spot here today. But to name a few of them is good. But you have several. You have so many over the years that have been played or playing in the college level.
Well, tonight Paige Cannon and Allie Poole, I'll be seeing them, and I'll be going out hopefully later on when I can, when the weather. If it's good weather and I got a time to get out, besides the ones I'm doing, I'm also watching, like I mentioned, we watched 30-some basketball games this past weekend, and that's just the beginning of the season for high school. So we're out a lot, especially John, watching, and I try to get out as much as I can besides running my other side business I've got,
sure,
and other things I've got going on. So getting out to see the collegiate players when they're within an area I can get there within a day, like I'm doing today, and then back home, and then I'll be going out probably again this past weekend or next weekend.
It's amazing. Switch over to from the college level, then switch over to the high school level. Now, are you following the kids that maybe you already have on the team for next year or in the previous year?
Well, both of us, Coach Coffey and myself. He had an older team, but they're mostly returning. And I had a younger team than that yet, and we played up. And the young team that's playing, I'm watching them. And the fact is, the first night out, we have a girl named Mackenzie Hurd who set a double-double for first game, almost a triple-double. And they're a Division III, the team she's on. This is a varsity. And they played a Division II team, which is historically very competitive, and they played at their house, and she turns in a double-double and hits the last second shot. Well, the buzzer went off, about a 20-some footer to go into overtime.
Wow.
And then two of her teammates got fouled out, and they lost in the last few minutes of the overtime. But they're doing well, and that's not foul shots either. Those are field goals she's hitting. So she's going to be pretty good, and she's got D1 schools looking at her now. Which we hope to expound upon on that. And we'll promote players like that as much as we can. And we'll have new players this year coming in who want to do that, and they'll have to learn how to incorporate all those feelings into our scheme of things and how to learn. And they'll do that. So we'll move up in age group again, even with the freshmen. They'll play higher, and they may not do as well, but they can hold it together and be patient on what their game is. It's hard when you play and get beat on as much as these younger players do, and come back and do it again and do it again. But they can see the rewards. Mackenzie can see the rewards already, because she went through a lot of stuff last year with us because we played her so hard. And other players on the team are beginning to understand that also. And I haven't seen all the players. I'm expounding upon her because she's real close. And other players are understanding that too. I've seen another player from another team, and I've got to go watch her in her first game or second game, and she's coming on too. I saw her in a scrimmage or a preview game, and she was the outstanding player on their team also, I felt. And we'll see more as we go and see what happens.
We hear that a lot with coaches and talking to even parents and stuff. You talked about playing up a grade or moving them up in the competition, and kind of so we hear that a lot where they're playing GBA events and they could play up a grade or even play their own grade, and then they go back to their school teams And it's the difference is they they thought they weren't getting any better, or they were getting beat up, so to speak,
Getting
and then all of a sudden getting discouraged, and then all of a sudden now they're back to their school team, they're having some success, and they're realizing what they had just done in the summertime is paying off.
Yes, it is, and that's the secret. And keeping the parents' emotion in check is hard for them also. It's probably just as hard or more hard because they're sitting there watching their child get beat to death, and don't understand, why are we doing this? So this is why.
Well, that's awesome. We appreciate it. We'll take another quick break and be back and talk about the Katie Smith Classic.
All right, welcome back, GBA Nation, back to GBA Studios, and we're special guest Tuck Connor, Team Ohio Basketball, and we're going to talk a little Katie Smith. We are very excited here at GBA to be partnering with Katie and hosting the first annual Katie Smith Classic coming to Columbus, Ohio, April 12th through the 14th.
What better guy to have in to talk Katie Smith than Tuck, coaching her since she was...
our first AAU tournament, basically. We went to Mississippi. Of course, we won the states. To go to Mississippi, you have to. Only one team out of the state got to go from each state, or out of each region of whatever AAU you had. And we were fortunate enough to have her, and we went.
Now, how old was she then, or grade? What grade was she?
We were, I think she might have been 6th or 7th grade at that time when we did go, and we went into 13 and unders, or 12 and unders. First time we went.
Okay, as many girls have you seen in the last 30 years? Is she number one by far?
Well, she overall, yes, athletically, she is. She was athletically great in every sport she played. I don't care if it was track and field. She won the state championships in shot and discus and track and field. She was the player of the year in volleyball in the state. She set all kind of records in basketball. But the one thing she did in basketball was she trained for basketball year-round. She had other coaches, personal coaches in track and field because of your techniques and throwing. She had those, but she incorporated that in. She was one of the hardest workers and more focused players at that age that I've ever had. Now I've had basketball players. Marlene Stallings was focused on basketball. And she played volleyball really well, but Katie was she was tops in everything, and in every sport she was in. She actually went with us to a national softball tournament because we had been national contenders in softball before we started basketball. She hit a softball that went through the outfield fence. Went through it. As advertisements, wooden was cardboard, or not cardboard, but plywood. Went right through it. Unbelievable hit. So upper body strength probably was her forte, and her dad and mom. Her dad encouraged all that, and they lived on a farm. She was 4-H and FFA, and mom was the economics or teacher for, I don't know the term, but she was one of the teachers at high school to do that. So she grew up in a great work environment. And between two brothers, as mom said, they had to fight for their food. So she had to fight for her food between an older brother who's a high school coach in Columbus area, or was, and her younger brother who's played a linebacker for our university when he came through school. So they were tough individuals.
Pretty athletic family.
Yes. The older brother was actually on a national championship football team, Mountain Union. So they're pretty tough individuals. And Dad was on the high university team when they went to the Tangerine Bowl for the undefeated season. So yes, that family is very competitive, and she learned that, and she's expounded upon it, and very successful to this day in the sport that she loved. And that's back where I said that you have to want to do this, and she wanted to do that. She found a niche that she really can play, and moving her from inside to outside just expanded her game, and she could do both. If you watch some of the I think the first Olympics she was in, she had to guard the post players as a guard. She was a guard, but she guarded the post players because their post players got in trouble, foul trouble, whatever, and she handled it real well because of her upper body strength and how she trained. And then she had an eye for the basket. That really helped. But
Right.
she was dominant.
How about the college coaches recruiting her
Oh my!
throughout the system? How did that?
That was when the college coaches were allowed to sit on our bench or be around us and talk. It would take me an hour and a half to 2 hours to get out of a gym
He was very popular.
because of her. We hit one of our, I think it was 15 and under. We had a tournament in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and we had an early game. We got there early, and we always get organized and get in and we had locker rooms at that time. So we came out for warm-ups, and the gym, one side was packed, and we couldn't figure out why they were. They were all college coaches. You're talking 300 college coaches had one side of the gym full. And
There to see her.
to see her,
Yeah.
yes.
Wow.
And they didn't miss a game. And we had games that were, we had 3 games in that event in Tennessee, and Pat Summit was right there, and so was Gino, that were overtime winners. We won in one of them, the 3rd-ranked team in the nation, Georgia, won in triple overtime, and Katie made the last shot in every one of them. So, yeah, we had college coaches everywhere. Stanford was a mainstay also, and that was one of the finalists. Penn State, you name any Big Ten team, they were there. Any Southwest team, Western team, she had her choice.
Was there any doubt she was not going to Ohio State?
There was doubt, yes. Stanford was a doubt. That was because Tara Vanderveer had been at Ohio State. So they had an edge, and Amy Tucker is from Ohio, one of the top players out of Ohio. And she was the assistant recruiting coordinator. And but yeah, it was there was a little doubt, but with the circumstances that prevailed, Ohio State won over, and she was a starter her freshman year and took them to the finals.
Yeah, Buckeye Nation was very happy for
Yes.
her staying
Yes.
home.
And they still are.
Yes,
They're
yeah,
still
absolutely.
devoted
She's
to
true
her.
and true
Yes.
Buckeye now. For
Oh, yes.
sure.
She's,
If anybody watched her speech, and
I know she lives she has a house in Columbus, but her home is in Ohio State. You'll find her around the campus somewhere.
Always,
She's the
yeah.
promoter of the school, and that's really speaks a lot for her, and speaks a lot for them.
yeah, she was very high on Ohio State when we met with her a couple weeks ago, just
yeah.
talking about the tournament, getting everything set up, and she was she's a Buckeye, that's for sure.
Yes, we've had a lot of players that come through our group that followed her into that, but not the same way that went into that Ohio State.
So college coaches would wait for you when you come out.
Oh,
of
heavens,
your
yes.
games to
They
talk
would get
to
in
you.
line, and they would be lined down the sideline from basket to basket, down the sideline, waiting to talk about the players, especially Katie, and what can they do to implement trying to get her to their school.
Really?
And you have to be gracious enough to indicate that you have to give her a call. So,
Yeah.
Right.
and she was gracious to all of them, and that's another factor that a lot of people don't understand. Some say, well, we're not going to there because they're too small or they're not what we want. No, she never did that. I don't care if you were Division III or you're a junior college or whatever. She talked to everybody about how good their school was and what it meant to possibly be there. She did not shove anybody away, and that's another factor of hers. And as you talked to her, you can sense that.
Sure, absolutely. And she, we was tickled to death. We had met with her several years ago, 5 to 10 years ago, on some other matters, and then it just led up to getting together and putting this together. And I know you had helped as well with this, putting on this event. And we're real excited to be able to host, the first annual Katie Smith event in Columbus, Ohio. And we're getting a great feedback now. That tournament, I think, will sell out. I think we only have 8 courts right now, so we're looking at 80 to 100 teams will be maxed out, but I think that tournament will max out. She's going to come in on Saturday evening, sign autographs, get some pictures. She has some other ideas, some other things that she was all fired up. She was, about doing some other, maybe some challenges.
Some skill challenges. and
Doing some
events
things,
like that.
bringing in some other people, whether it be NBA players, coaches, whatever, to talk. she is really fired up about it. So, I mean, we left that meeting very excited, and she was coming up with ideas. So,
we're
she'll be there.
Still working on all the details with that, but yeah, it's going to be a great event.
Yeah, so I think we may throw in some more twists to what we're doing. We'd love to have you there to introduce her.
I'll be there.
For sure.
We're planning on putting teams in there
That's
so
gonna be
they can
awesome.
meet her also.
Get in early, sign up early.
And we've had numerous phone calls. We probably have 20 teams already.
Yeah, that's one in. So
that's one in, and we haven't even made it to Christmas. So.
Yeah, so we've never had that before. So never in any tournament. So
and those are going to be the games are going to be held at Dublin Scioto and Dublin Jerome high schools. This year, we ran into Katie at the Final Four last year, and then trying to put dates together, so we weren't able to get it in one facility for this year. So those will be held at the 2 Dublin schools. But
what a good person! Very inspiring person. To talk to her, and she was all excited. I mean, she's excited to be able to come back and talk to the players, talk to the parents. Said, hey, we'll do autographs, so we'll get some pictures to sign, and so she's all. She's excited. We're excited. So we think it's going to be a great, not just a tournament, but an event. So
I think it'll be an annual event, and it'll expand.
Absolutely, yeah, we're open. Yeah,
You
it
won't
could
have
be
enough
one of the
venues.
biggest. Yeah, I think it could be one of the biggest tournaments in Ohio ever. So.
That's correct.
and that's it's funny you say that, because that was one of the things that Katie talked about, that she doesn't just want to have this as a one-year thing.
Right.
She wants to build it and do it an annual thing. So it's something that teams and kids look forward to year in and year out.
And they talk about it, and just like we built the Warren Hill tournament and our national tournament and some of our other tournaments up, that's going to be right there along with them. So
Good.
So we're excited to do it. We appreciate all your help for it, and it's kind of nice to get an insight from her back in 6th grade all the way up through. So
Yes.
Yeah, and what she's meant for women's basketball is huge in the state of
Huge.
Ohio. So we're excited about having this event and kicking it off in Columbus. That date again is April 12th through the 14th in Columbus, Ohio. So
registration is open now on our website at gbabasketball.com. You can register for that tournament. If you don't have your whole roster done, you could at least get registered in. Send us the roster later. If you have any questions, call us at the office, but we will fill up before the deadline, and we cannot take any other teams. So when we fill up, it's going to be full. Don't miss out on that great event, for sure.
Yep. So again, we just want to thank Coach Connor for coming to GBA Studios. Was happy to have him. We talked a little Katie Smith, and we're looking forward to this event come spring.
Have safe travels. We appreciate you stopping in. Hopefully we can get you back in before the season starts. And I know we want to wish you the best. Not only are you taking time out of your day and with your daughter, and we're thinking about her and her
Thank
health
you.
issues, and it's you're to be commended for what you do for as many girls as you do, and the family situations you got on, and you're going to watch former players play and current players, and that says a lot about you and Coach Coffey, and we definitely appreciate it, and we're glad to be part of it.
As Coach Coffey says, what you do and what we do is a lifestyle.
That's correct. Yes.
It's what we
He
do.
does say that, and hopefully we'll get him in the studio before too long. Have safe travels, and we appreciate it. John.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.